Now, it's almost comical, were it not so serious, to see Shukracharya trying to convince his disciple, Bali Maharaj, not to live up to his promise and give a donation. And he tries to catch him on a technicality. He's like some lawyer. He says, well, if you don't say the word Om before you make the promise, then you don't really have to give. And so the king replies, well, but I did tell him. And Shukracharya says, but you didn't say Om. If you didn't say Om before, then you don't go through with your promise. You don't have to. And besides, don't you know there's various occasions when you can say things but not really mean them? And he says, well, how can I do that? I'm a king. Once a king has spoken, certainly once a Brahmin has spoken, then these promises have to be followed through. He says, well, if you say something during a marriage, if you make a speech during someone's wedding, everybody knows you don't really mean it. You don't really mean it. So a person could say, oh, he's so wonderful, she's so wonderful. But you don't really mean it. And there's no recrimination if afterwards it is discovered that you were simply engaged in some flattery. Or if there's someone who is emotional, you can say anything to bring them under your control. Or in these different circumstances, this is your get out clause. These two things, a religious technicality and a social technicality. He says, no. He says, this boy came to me. He's a Brahmin. I washed his feet. And then I said to him, I will give you anything that you want. He said, I just want 3 steps of land. And now you're telling me that he's Vishnu. If he is Vishnu, then history repeats itself. History repeats itself. Because my grandfather, Prahlad Maharaj, he was a great devotee of Vishnu, and I shall also try to follow in his footsteps. Now, the interesting thing is that Vamanadev has already praised not only the grandfather of Bali Maharaj, but his great-grandfather, his 2 great-grandfathers. And this is very much in keeping with how Brahmanas behave when they're Kshatriyas. The fame of a Kshatriya, the reputation of a Kshatriya is very important to him. I think I spoke last time about the story where the Kshatriya came back to the fort and he called out, he said, let me in. And his wife, the queen, called out the window. She said, who is that down there? He said, it's your husband, such and such. She said, no. He said, you can't possibly be such and such. He would either die on the battlefield and be brought back dead, but he wouldn't come back wounded. He'd either come back a champion or dead. So you can't be him. Go away, you imposter. So this is a Kshatriya. Kshatriya also means that when he said, I will give, then his honor is such that he has to follow through on that promise. Otherwise, he doesn't say it, he doesn't open his mouth. So many times Prabhupada explained that in days of old, your word was your bond. In other words, it did not take a sheet of paper with all the significant clauses signed and edited by a lawyer, a top lawyer from a top firm, plus a signature, plus a witness, plus a physical witness to make sure that you'd made a promise. No, a handshake and a verbal promise was enough. And that's why people still do it on a significant sale. They shake hands and they just say, okay, now the deal is done. So like that, we have this culture that even if you said a promise and you thought that you were misled at the time, still I made my promise and I have to follow through. When Bhishma made his promise, didn't he? He made one promise and then he said, well, Well, how do I know that you will keep your promise? Then he made a even greater promise to remain celibate for the rest of his life, and the demigods threw flower petals over him. That was his promise. So everybody acknowledged what a wonderful thing that he's done. So in this case, the guru, and I'm sure you've discussed this about different types of guru, the dependable guru and the undependable guru. There are many kinds of guru, of course, but we want the dependable one. And Vamanadeva has already praised Shukracharya. He's already said, Shukracharya, well, my dear Bali Maharaj, you're advised by Shukracharya, who is none other than the descendant of Bhrigu himself. What a wonderful guru you have, and what a wonderful king you are, because not only is your grandfather Prahlad Maharaj, but your great-grandfather was the wonderful Hiranyakashipu and the wonderful Hiranyaksha. And Brahmadadev continues, he says, oh, and by the way, he says Hiranyakashipu was so fierce that Lord Vishnu himself was afraid of him. And when Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha saw Hiranyakashipu coming, he had to hide himself in great anxiety. And he chose to go inside the heart of Hiranyakashipu simply so he could not find him. He said, this is the greatness of Hiranyakashipu. So he's finding something. He's finding something to glorify in the great-grandfather of Bali Maharaj. And this, of course, is how you deal with someone who is very, very attached to being famous. They want you to remind them how famous they are. Not only that you're famous, but when you introduce a famous person on stage, for instance, you say, she's done this and she's done that, and she's given so much in charity, and she's very famous for doing this, and she wrote a book, and she was in the movie, and now here she is on stage. Everybody put your hands together for, and everybody bursts into applause because you've extended the kirti, you've extended the fame of that person, isn't it? You've extended the fame of that person. So then that famous person says, well, thank you so much for that wonderful speech. Brackets, everything that you said is absolutely true. I am wonderful. So in dealing with a person who's attached to fame, even God himself extends the fame of that person. At the same time, we should understand that Bali Maharaj was just about to become one of the most famous people in the entire universe. So famous, in fact, that in New York, Bali Maharaj is so famous that in New York, in the morning, before anybody's even had breakfast, we have been talking about him for days and days and days and days. He's so famous. He's more famous than anybody that you've ever met. He's more famous than any other New Yorker. He's more famous than anybody in America, any president. He was the king of the whole show. And he lived how long ago? Many, many, many centuries ago. And we're still talking about him now. And the reason we're talking about him now is what's just about to come. He's about to do something which not only guaranteed his fame, but also sealed his fame for time immemorial. Now, Prabhupada here, he says that Chanakya Pandit says, and Chanakya Pandit was also a Brahmin who was very good at, shall we say, buttering up kings. One king in particular, Chandragupta of the Maurya dynasty, he buttered him up. He knew just how to push the buttons of a particular king, but he was also very practical in his help as well. So he says that life is very short and we should all do something to extend our reputation so that people will talk about us for millions of years. Now we have Christmas coming up. It's named after Jesus Christ, a poor man, but his reputation has far exceeded his 33 years. So much so, in fact, that we still use his name for the big season of the year. We still celebrate his birthday. Why do we celebrate his birthday? Because he is famous for being a devotee of God. And in many places, Prabhupada says in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, he says that if you want a person who wants to have a peaceful mind should worship the horizon. Person who wants a beautiful wife should worship this person. Person who wants great wealth should worship Kubera. Person who wants, control of the senses, worship Shiva, etc., etc. But a person who wants fame, great fame, should worship Vishnu. How is that possible? How is it possible for me to be talked about by many people and to be famous by, basically speaking, giving everything away to someone? Because that's what devotees do. I remember being a young devotee. I was in Scotland, and I walked past a big plate glass window, big department store, and for the first time, because we didn't have mirrors, we put on tilak without a mirror because a mirror was supposed to be Maya. So we didn't have any mirrors for my first few weeks. And so I caught sight of myself in a big window, and I didn't recognize myself. I was looking at the reflection. I couldn't recognize who it was. It was because here was this person. I had hair down to here. That was gone. I had trousers and a jacket. That was gone. Basically, the Hare Krishnas had taken everything away. They'd taken my trousers. They'd taken my jacket. They'd taken my hat. They'd taken my rucksack. And they even took away my hair. So I was looking in the window. I just didn't, I didn't recognize the person that was staring back. And in that moment, I had a great sense of loss, that I've lost my identity. I've surrendered my identity to this group of people. They've taken away the person that I was, and they've given me back, I'm not sure who they've given me back, but they've given me back a person that looks like a person I don't recognize. So it's quite common in the life of a person, including devotees, to initially surrender and then to have second thoughts. It's very common for a person to determine, to make a sankalpa, I will surrender, I will give. And then to get to the point of giving and to back out, to get cold feet, so to speak. So for all these circumstances, there's a remedy. But if you do give, then your fame becomes established. And if you do give to Krishna, then you become closer to Krishna. Just like Krishna says, Diksha Kale, what is that? Diksha Kale something. But a person who takes Diksha, he becomes as good as me. So Krishna is the most famous. The very definition of God is the most famous person who's ever lived. Because even if you don't believe in God, you say, you shout at a person, oh my God, don't you realize God doesn't exist? Oh my God, don't you realize God doesn't exist? You see, like my friend who's now a sannyasi, his name was Gyana, and he spent 18 months in a Buddhist monastery, and after coming back from Japan, it didn't work for him. He didn't find the mental peace that he was looking for. He went down on his knees and he looked out the window at the starry night, and he said, dear God, and then he was wondering what to say. So he said, dear God, you know I don't believe in you, but if you do exist, can you show me the way forward? So what a prayer. Dear God, you know I don't believe in you, but if you exist, can you show me the way forward? So the very next day he met the devotees and he joined the temple. So the God that didn't exist, it turned out that the God did exist, and he became successful. Yeah. Diksha Kale Bhakta Kare Atma Samarpan Se Kale Krishna. Something. Se Kale Krishna Tare Kare Atma Sam. At the time of initiation, when a devotee fully surrenders unto the service of the Lord, Krishna accepts him to be as good as himself. So if you surrender to Krishna, then you become as good as Krishna in terms of your reputation. And it's an amazing thing. If you open up the pages of Chaitanya Charitamrita, you will find the name of Lord Chaitanya very, very often. But you'll also find heaps and heaps and heaps and piles of names of the devotees of Lord Chaitanya. These people have gone down in history. Now, sometimes, for those of us who think in the short term, it's not enough to be famous after I die. I want to be famous while I'm alive, please. Can I swap some of that fame after death for some fame during this life? And the answer is no. Unfortunately, the answer is no. If you want fame, you can't have it. If you want surrender, you can have it, and fame will follow you like a shadow. But for many years afterwards, you will be famous, but for having not wanted fame. So how can you be a person who becomes famous for not wanting fame? Well, you think of the people who've been selfless in their activities. We do remember them. We remember every year on Veterans Day. We remember people who gave their life in service to the country. We remember them. We honor them. We remember people who gave their life inventing cures for the incurable diseases. We remember them. Sometimes we remember people who've sacrificed in service to humanity. We remember those people. We reward them. But the devotees of God, we remember forever. And wherever we remember God, we will also remember those devotees. Now, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya asked Ramananda, he said, what's the best reputation? And Ramananda Roy said, to be a devotee. That's the best reputation. But then Raghunath Das Goswami, the great follower of Lord Chaitanya, he said that fame, perhaps someone knows the quote, either he said that fame is, he said that fame is like a dog, a desire for fame is like a prostitute who wants to eat dog flesh, which is a pretty graphic combination. Or he said that the attraction to fame is like the urine of a donkey. So either way, I forget, my dear devotees, I forget the quote, but either way, either a prostitute who wants to eat dog meat or the urine of a donkey, either way, fame is something that devotees do not want. But this introduces for us the discussion of what's the difference between material fame and spiritual fame. Material fame can come from doing something mundane. It can come as a result of previous charity in one's last life. If you're very charitable in your last life, in this life, you automatically have fame. Fame is one of these 6 opulences that come to you. Sometimes we do find that a person is a very talented person. You know, for instance, a person is a very talented musician, but they don't become famous. Sometimes a person is very rich, but they don't become famous. So fame is one of the 6 elements of opulence, one of the bhagas. It's independent. Sometimes we find a person is famous for doing nothing at all. Right? We find that they're just famous for being famous. They're not quite, you know, they've got the opulence of fame. But if you ask anybody why are they famous, you go, well, I don't actually know what. Did he write something? Did he record something? Did he give millions to poor children in Africa? No, he's just sort of famous because he's got that blessing to be famous. Unfortunately, and here's the bad news, these bhagas, they go up and down like the stock exchange. This, you know, you are famous. Well, even in one life, fame goes up and down. The number of times I have met on book distribution many years ago. I met famous people who were famous when I first became a devotee. They were extremely famous. And I met them years later, and their fame had disappeared. It had all vanished, just evaporated. And even in one lifetime, of course, fame can disappear completely and can turn into infamy. Beauty that comes and it goes, as we all experience as soon as you hit 40. any handsomeness that a man has, any beauty that a woman has, gradually, time, they say, waits for no man or woman. And that beauty, it goes up, then it goes down. Suddenly fame goes up and down. So fame that is born from good deeds in one's last life disappears in this life. And fame that is born in this life will also disappear. But fame that is due from being a devotee, that will come and will tend to remain, because it becomes eternalized, because it becomes the same quality of the Godhead himself. Now, when we look at does a devotee want fame? Do devotees do they want to be famous? Not really. Let's consider the example of Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri was, the whole idea of a sannyasi is that you give up everything. Sannyasi gives up everything, gives up his hair, gives up his clothes. Sannyasi can't even dress in the color that they want. Sannyasis' wardrobes just have one color in them. I remember many years ago when I was a brahmachari, I wouldn't even dream of having a blue toothbrush or a green toothbrush. I thought it was Maya to have any other possession or any possession that was any other color apart from orange. So suchi kit, toothbrush, anything, all had to be saffron. Socks. We look at a devotee who had, brown socks or black socks. What are you doing? You're letting the whole sampradaya down. So sannyasi gives away everything, even the idea of wearing clothing of a color that he may choose. The sannyasi, it said that there's only a few items in the Yati Dharma Samuchaya, which was a book put together by Yadava Prakash, the disciple of Ramanujacharya. He said there's only a few things that a sannyasi can have that are white. He said his Brahmin thread, the strainer for straining out insects from brackish water. He said, and the last white thing the sannyasi can have is his teeth. But apart from this, the sannyasi gives everything away. I don't know why I'm laughing. They give everything away. So, but the insidious thing that he should give away, the thing that he should give away is lust. I give it away, says the sannyasi. I give away lust. I give away greed. I give away anger and my so-called self-righteous anger. But the most difficult gift to give away is the desire for fame. It's very difficult to give that one away because fame is closely associated with being appreciated. And being appreciated is very close to being loved. And of course, that's what we really crave. And so if I give away my desire just to at least be known, am I not also giving away my desire to be appreciated? And I do want to be appreciated. I do want to be appreciated. And if I give my desire away to be appreciated, am I not giving away my desire to be loved? And actually, I must, hand on heart, I must say that I do want to be loved. So let me hang on to the fame that comes from being a devotee for just a little while longer. But a sannyasi is meant to give that away, but it's very deep, deep, deep down. And so most sannyasis, you find, The reason why they keep traveling is so that fame for being a devotee of Vishnu will not pursue them, because it's automatic that as soon as you give a class about the most famous person and you create within the minds of your listeners the image of the most beautiful face of Sri Krishna, then guaranteed you will be famous. Everybody will be talking about you. Did you hear the wonderful class she gave? Wasn't it wonderful? I just felt that Krishna was so real. I felt my faith increase. Isn't he such a wonderful sannyasi? And for that, the sannyasi then, he says, well, I'm sorry, I'm out of here. I got to go. If you're going to talk about me like that, I'm going. So Madhavendra Puri, he just had the stray thought, I would like to get this little pot of sweet rice. Here's a little pot of sweet rice. Not really. A little pot of sweet rice. He said, I wonder what that tastes like. And the deity was being offered the sweet rice. And as soon as he thought that, he was a very harsh judge of his own thoughts. He said, well, that was lust. Because I was also thinking what it would taste like to offer that to Krishna. So fie upon me. And he left the temple in disgust at his own selfish thoughts. So then in the evening, he went to sleep in the marketplace, found some space, as sannyasis do. And he said, well, he didn't say anything. But the pujari of the temple was also asleep, and he had a dream, and the Lord came to him in a dream and said, look, I've taken one of the pots of sweet rice that you offered me at the last offering, and I have put it behind my leg, and so I want you to take that. This is the middle of the night, so I want you to take that, and I want you to give it to the sannyasi that's sleeping in the marketplace, Madhavendra Puri. So instantly the pujari woke up. Wouldn't we all like such a dream like that Krishna comes to us at night and speaks something to us, and we know, yes, Krishna is real, and Krishna is not only real, but he's real for me, and he spoke to me. I spoke to him every day in my chanting of mantras, but Krishna spoke to me personally. We dream of such dreams. And so immediately he acted on that dream, and he came to the altar, and he looked, and there was the pot of sweet rice, and he went to the marketplace, and he found Madhavendra Puri, and he gave it to him. He said, the Lord asked me to personally give you this, and said it was all right, your thoughts were okay, take it with you. And immediately everybody that morning started talking about Madhavendra Puri, the person. Are you the Swami that Krishna hid a pot of sweet rice for? Is that you? Oh, please accept my dandavats at your feet. And immediately he had to leave because fame was following him, and he didn't want to be pursued. And the opposite is a sahaja. A sahaja is a cheap imitation devotee who wants to artificially imitate the renunciation of fame. So you speak to them and they will go, oh, I'm nothing. No, don't praise me. I'm lower than the worm in stool. In fact, I'm the stool that comes out of the worm in stool. No, I'm even lower than that. I have nothing. And their claims to not wanting fame is their badge for a deep desire for fame. That's the problem. So they will imitate, and they will show some qualities, but they're fake qualities. So one always has to be very careful about that, because you cannot imitate. One time Prabhupada went to Mayapur, and they came and they told them about a devotee that was now living in Mayapur, and they told them he was chanting 192 rounds a day, and he was not eating very much. And Prabhupada was just, And then they came to Prabhupada and they said, Prabhupada, he says he wants to live under a tree. And then Prabhupada said, he wants? What is this want? He wants to live under a tree? You know, if he's advanced, then he cannot want. He says no wants for anything. Anyway, then that devotee left after some time. So we hear from the great devotees that this desire for fame, desire for appreciation, and it must be said the desire for love, to be loved by other devotees, is a hridaya durlabham. Hridaya durlabham. It's very deeply there within the heart. And not only that, it's a little bit like, just a couple of days ago, we were told here in England that the virus has now changed. There's now a new mutation of the virus that is spreading even quicker. So just when we thought 2020 couldn't get any worse, now we have a mutated virus that's even more dangerous. Oh, what a terrible thing. And so, unfortunately, the desire for fame is like that. It comes in one form, and we try to get rid of it by adopting one, and then it comes back to us in another form. And it can become progressively more subtle, Prabhupada says. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is kirti, to get rid of one's own fame by doing kriti, kirtan, sankirtan. Kirtan means to make Krishna famous. So if we're singing, talking, discussing about the fame, the beauty, the knowledge, the compassion, the strength, the character, the wisdom of Krishna, then there is no room in our hearts for our own fame, thoughts of our own fame. Prabhupada went to school in Calcutta, and he gave a very strange example. He said sometimes, the heat of Calcutta would evaporate the ink, the blue ink in our ink bottle. Every child had an ink bottle on the desk. Sometimes it was so hot it would evaporate the ink. He said, but then, when it got cold again, and I've never seen this, but Prabhupada said it. He said the ink would condense back into the ink bottles. Prabhupada said it. He said, so how do you remove ink from an ink bottle? He said, it is very difficult. He said, but if you pour milk into the ink, eventually you will have blue milk, light blue milk, lighter, 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 until eventually there is only milk. He said, so in this way, he said, you have something in your heart and you gradually replace it by something that you do want, and it will be completely replaced. So how do we cope with the, when do we finish, by the way, Gaurasharan?
We have another 8 minutes, Prabhu.
Oh, 8 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
How do we cope with the thought that if I surrender completely to Krishna, will I be happy? Well, we begin the process, and that's the thing. We begin the process, and as we experience some relief from material suffering, then we can gradually confirm our suspicions that Krishna consciousness is something that is beneficial for me. So in this way, I chant not because I want to chant, but because I'm intellectually convinced that chanting is a good thing. Then I chant and I experience that chanting makes me happy. Then the next day I chant because yesterday I was happy because I chanted. Then I have more intellectualization of where I am and what I'm doing and how I'm progressing on the path. Then I become happier, and eventually happy will become free from fear. free from fear that I will be the loser if I surrender to Krishna. But I already surrendered to Krishna. I already surrendered. People say, when did you get initiated? Well, I got initiated on the 19th of January, 2006. Okay. Is that when you surrendered? Yeah, I surrendered everything. I surrendered and became a devotee. Is that correct? Is initiation the same as surrender? No. Initiation is the beginning of the process of surrender, which can go on for a long time. The other last thing I want to talk about is that Bali Maharaj, he was thinking, if I do not now surrender, if I don't give to Vishnu, I will be an embarrassment to my family. I will be an embarrassment to the good name of Prahlad Maharaj. Even if I'm defamed, I don't mind. But I don't want to be remembered as a miser. God forbid I should be remembered as a miser. So in the same way, we have to be very careful about surrendering and then taking our surrender back from Krishna. In other words, I was initiated, I surrendered, and now I'm thinking about it, and maybe I didn't do the right thing. So now I gradually want to take some of that surrender back. And I do want to enjoy some of the fame or some of the reputation or something, please. Because God knows I need to be appreciated for what I've been doing all these years. And if you're not going to praise me for what I've been doing all these years, then I'm going to start praising myself. So gradually we take a little bit of the surrender that we gave, and we should be careful of that. We know the story of King Nriga. King Nriga, just accidentally, he'd given some cows that wandered into someone else's farm, and he became a lizard. You know, he gave, and just accidentally he took back. The big story of someone who gave to Prabhupada and then took it back was Mr. N. Mr. N in Bombay. He gave land to Prabhupada, and then he took it back. And what did Prabhupada say at the end of everything? He said, everybody will go back to Godhead. He said to his disciples, he said, you will all go back to Godhead, he said, except Mr. N. He will not go back. So our desire for fame is, we may want to be famous in the Krishna consciousness movement, or in our neighborhood, or in our family, or whatever it is. We have to be very careful of that fame. And we should be careful of never being the cause of embarrassment. You know, we have the weight of the sampradaya on our shoulders. And we may think, well, obviously it's not me, it's him. It's him over there. He's the preacher, he's the Swami, he's the guru. He's supposed to be the one that carries the sampradaya forward. But if we're all heaping everything on the shoulders of just a few people, we've seen that creates problems, doesn't it? Who will be the guru after you, Srila Prabhupada? What did Prabhupada say? He said, they will all be. Whoever accepts, what did he say? Whoever accepts the teachings, whoever carries that forward, they will all be. So everybody is, in that sense, just like the counselors of Bali Maharaj were descendants of Bhrigu. If your great-great-grandfather was Bhrigu, then you have a duty to be the counselor, the spiritual advisor of a great king. That's the way it works often in India. I was visiting with a young man in Sri Rangam, and I looked at the walls of his house, and the walls of his house were made of black granite. And I said, how long has this house been here? He said, 1100. I said, what do you mean? Since what? Since 1100 AD, this house has been here. And I said, well, don't mind me asking, but do you get a house? Because I was thinking, calculating how it works for temple devotees in Sri Rangam. So I said, do you get the house along with how long have your family been living in this house? He said, oh, 900 years. I said, well, your family's been living in this house for 900 years. I said, so who's the, how does it work? So his father was a guru. His father was a guru, all the way back for 900 years. The family business, you could say, was to be a guru and have disciples. And so his father, I said, how many disciples does your father have? He said, oh, 1,000, something like this, something like that. So the whole idea is that the king's family and the Brahmin's family, they can be related for many, 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 many generations. So my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a king, and here's my Brahmin, and his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was the advisor to my great-great-great-great-grandfather. That's the way it works. So do not be the cause of embarrassment to Bhrigu, and do not be the cause of embarrassment to Hiranyakashipu. How can someone be an embarrassment? But Prahlad Maharaj, at least, don't be an embarrassment to him. Because fame tends to corrupt. So in ISKCON now, we also see that many people have thousands of disciples. What is the secret of not being corrupted by fame? Well, the heart must be pure. Just like, electricity is conducted best by gold. We don't use gold because everybody would steal it, but gold is the best conductor of electricity. So the purer the metal, the greater the electrical connection. The purer the heart, the greater the connection. And then things won't degrade. But we worship Bali Maharaj every time I do ceremonies, of course. I do weddings and other things. Every time we do a wedding and we see the gift of a daughter into the new family, we meditate on the gift of Bali Maharaj to Vamanadev. As the water is poured over the girl's hand, we meditate that this is a gift that can now not be taken as Om as the water goes. But when I do a house entrance, a Griha Pravesh, we meditate on Bali Maharaj and his great place. And he's in the foundation of the new house of the new Grihastas, is Bali. We meditate on those 12 Mahajans. So even up until today, we glorify him in different ceremonies. We remember him in different ceremonies. And what is the acceptable story to tell at a wedding ceremony? Prabhupada says, the acceptable story is the story of Vamanadev and the great gift of Bali Maharaj. So one type of fame will corrupt us, and the other type of fame will restore us eternally. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.